Hey, what's up, everybody? Fellow Rocket League esportsers. Yesterday's video was kind of an interesting talking about some of the differentiation between scheduling and all that kind of stuff. But today's video actually is kind of a continuation of that. Yesterday's conversation got me thinking about how things are handled and with the younger ages and some of the things from other esports that I really enjoy. And one of those things that was kind of briefly mentioned is academy teams, the ability to have a starting roster, and if orgs choose to do so, a secondary roster where they foster talent, and then if they need a sub, or if they have the ability to say, like, this player is performing better than you at the moment, which incentivizes you to practice and grind and stuff. This person gets promoted to the A team, you get pushed down to the B team, and you try to grind your way back. So it led me to the question, should Rocket League esports expand the roster size? What is up, everybody? Lawler here, your inside source for all things Rocket League. Nothing really too big on the news today, but this one's going to be just pretty off the cuff, pretty candid. Ultimately, it's just kind of my overall thoughts about the roster size. A little bit of history before we get into that. For those that don't know, Rocket League rosters have actually changed size in the past, and a lot of it was just because of where Rocket League was at the very beginning. Way back in RLCS days, the very first season was actually in two parts. There was a part 1 and a part 2. Kind of like how we earn points now for a circuit-based system. They did that over the course of 2 seasons, where you had a roster that would play, and based upon their performance, they then got into the next split, and their points together would then allow them to go to the World Championship. Case in point with this was the original iBuyPower Cosmic team with Kronovi, Gambit, and Lichinio, and then Gambit ended up leaving. They bring in Overzero, World Championship run, etc. They actually did really poorly in that second split, but because they did so dominant in the first one, taking first place, it was enough to make up for it. They go to Worlds, they end up winning with a sub. Rest is history, Rocket Jesus, Kronovi being the mountain, all that kind of stuff. There was a team a long time ago by the name of Retrospect that was in rotation with actually a 5-man roster. And there's some players that you probably may know. Classics, Espion, Kyle Mask, shot hurled around the world, good buddy of mine in Husky, and also Flo, a Gizmo main that was absolutely cracked. This team later got picked on by Onslaught Esports. This team was actually the first true iteration of a 5-man roster where, depending on the week and scheduling and everything else, they would have different players play from week to week. And there wasn't this limitation where there was X amount of games have to be played in order to do trades and all that kind of stuff. And the reason why is because everything was truly an open qualifier. To make it into the RLCS, you had to play in a massive 9, 10, 11,000 team bracket. And eventually, if you were the top 8, you made it in. It was super cutthroat. People hated it, and rightfully so. If you were the best team in the world, why do I have to go through this big process just to make it back in? And yeah, there was buys and seeding and all that kind of stuff, but much better the way that things evolved and have evolved over the course of all the seasons with automatic bids and the rival series. It's a big, long process that maybe someday I'll provide like a history. Maybe if we hit like a ton of subs, like 100K sub video, that's like way down the line. It's just showing how much I don't want to do this video. Maybe I will do like a history timeline thing. Let me know if you want to hear that down below. And no, don't ask me that question. What's the timeline of Rocket League Esports? Because that is something I will just not answer. So we had technical 5-man rosters. The reason why this kind of went away was primarily when the World Championship rolled around, Psyonix had to cover the funding of these rosters. And primarily it was 3 starters and a sub. And similar regards over to Amsterdam in Season 2, where 3 starters and a sub. And they realized more and more that the sub didn't really do anything. It was pretty much them paying for a free ride for a trip to go and hang out and have fun, which for the subs was super cool and set a precedent for a very long time of, yo, I'm going to sign on as a sub last second so I get a free trip across the country and get to hang out with the boys, which by all means, don't blame the players at all. I think it's super smart. It's a cool way to hook up a buddy and they get a cool experience out of it. For a lot of players, it also enticed them. The ability to go and see the World Championship and they're like, this is how you guys get treated. I never want to be a sub again. I'm motivated to go. And that was the mentality behind Psyonix as well, is we want the RLCS to be this grand event and we want to inspire future generations to come and play. And I think they've done a pretty dang good job of that. Rocket League Esports, when you get to go and watch the event, is some of the best moments of my entire life. And I can say that without hesitation, despite the history and all that kind of stuff. Rocket League Esports live events are legitimately some of the funnest times I've had ever. So Psyonix made a conscious decision to say, hey, we're not going to cover that for the subs. And as the, I guess, scene has evolved and the RL esports scene has matured, you've seen those spots go to coaches, managers instead. And if subs, etc., want to come out, they force, and it's primarily coaches and stuff. If they have a coach, manager, sub, etc., it is up to that organization to apply some sort of funding or some sort of way to get those members staff-wise covered. They have to either pay for it out of pocket or delegate some sort of cash flow to it to make it happen. So now that we've got some of the history, let's talk about implementation and benefits and all that kind of stuff. Right now, obviously, there is a 3-4 rule with the starting roster where whether it be the sub or the starting roster, the 3 players, if you swap one of those players and remove them and bring somebody else in, that counts as 1 roster change. And if you do 2 and you are not removing the person you just brought in, which is very unlikely, case in point, we can look at version 1, keep the new merch. It's actually super clean. But if I was version 1, I got rid of AXB, I bring in Com. The only other roster person I can switch out is Com and get rid of Com and bring in another player. And that kind of is counterintuitive to the whole process. Is if you're trying to improve your roster and you bring in a new player, it's more likely that you're going to replace an old member that is kind of fading out to bring in another new player. So that just doesn't happen. They're kind of stuck with that roster for an extended period of time. And now that that is a precedent being set with a season that is essentially 9 to 12 months, it creates some complication. I personally like that teams are forced to stay together for these reasons, and there is some protection rules put in place. But I would also like the ability for rosters in general to just be a little bit bigger, or change that 3-4 rule to where the sub isn't technically classified as a roster change. It's classified as like a sub change, possibly. Maybe something like that they could possibly in the future update to enable a little bit more freedom to the orgs. The thing I'm talking about, though, is academy teams here. League of Legends and other really, really big tier 1 esports are known for having a secondary or a sister team, as they refer to it, that they use to have regular scrims against. These are like, in League of Legends, high challenger, top tier ladder players, the up-and-comers, the people that are solo queue gods. I'm talking for Rocket League, your Aquas, your Dreezes, players like that have a ton of potential but aren't quite there yet. And you sign them as academy players. That way, not only those players get paid, but they also have representation. And then when the time comes, the orgs that are willing to shell out the cash and put that foot forward and have faith that this player is going to dedicate to it still and wants to go professional, it gives them some stability. So when the time does come, they can do so. And right now, I feel like that's pretty far-fetched because roster spots are owned by the players. Orgs, I don't think, are going to shell out that kind of money. Obviously, there's some orgs that have kind of put that in place. Guild Esports is a prime example where they have a system where they plan to foster talent and grow them up in a traditional football kind of sense. That has been kind of their mentality of how things work. So I'm curious if Rocket League has plans or if there is a way structurally that we could see that end up happening in the future. If we're trying to be a traditional sport, I feel like expanding that roster size a little bit is actually really beneficial. Not only does, with a younger player base, provide some stability and help kind of guide these players to that next level with whether it be not just structure in general and time management and stuff like that, but also the ability to get through things like the difficulty of getting picked up or representation, media training, just in general, how to develop that personality into something positive and at a younger and younger age, because that is something that is intrinsic to the way that the entertainment industry has become. And maybe that's just my bias as an American, but you look at the NFL and how young these kids are looked at. I mean, you're talking about colleges and schools and everything else. You have a direct path. When you're a young kid playing in Pop Warner or whatever it may be, especially in the southern states where football is such a huge emphasis, these kids know immediately right out of the gate, like, yo, my path is to pro and this is how I do it. After playing in Pop Warner and stuff, I then play in middle school and high school. And after high school, I then try to get into college with a scholarship. And after college, I go straight to the NFL. Like, it's step by step. You know exactly what you do. And Psyonix actually introduced this. This was what the field into the grid into the RLCS regionals is supposed to be. You see the same thing over in football clubs over in Europe and everywhere else in the world, where they have academies and infrastructure built to kids as young as like 4, 5, 6 years old get put into these, and fundamentally it's all they know. Like, you're really good at soccer because you've been playing it for 15 years of your life, and those fundamentals and those things are happening and developing at such a young age. It's why a lot of young players, while their brain develops, are really, really cracked at this game. They do mechanics like it's secondhand because it's just intrinsic in what they know. Personally, I think I'm for and against it. Like at this end of the day, I don't want to force any kids into the spotlight, dealing with the social pressures and being a public figure and all that kind of stuff. Because at a young age, I think the only thing you should be focused on is, you know, doing well in school, being happy, having friends, learning social constructs and stuff like that. And, you know, trying to get a girl or guy's number, whatever you're into, you know? So I feel like it's a lot of pressures to put on, but for those that are actively trying to pursue it and serious, this could be the next step. So expanding rosters, I'm curious on what you guys think. This is just kind of a weird thought that I had and thought it'd be cool to make a video. If you guys do have any other questions, comments, concerns about this video, I'm curious on what you have to say. Leave those down below, and while you're down there, thumbs up, subscribe, notifications, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.